Hello all and good evening. Welcome on board Flight 2421 with service to Richmond. This is your captain, Herbert Donovan speaking, and I have some information on your flight. Our flying time today will be 1 hour and 53 minutes, with an estimated time of arrival of 7:46 local time. The weather on our route is looking good, so I'm expecting little turbulence, and the temperature at our destination is ripe for a perfect landing, setting the stage for what will be my last flight before retirement. You see, I turn 65 tomorrow, and this will be my final journey after 41 wonderful years as a commercial airline pilot. I've logged over 37,000 flight hours in the friendly skies. I've had both ups and downs, literally and figuratively. But I've loved this job. So did my dear wife, Eleanor, who we sadly lost last year. To Ellie and I, we raised two fine children, both Jacob and Sharon. They're all grown up now, with kiddos of their own to look after. Well, I sure as heck do love being a pilot, but I don't love it nearly as much as being called Grandpa, or as much as I adored being husband to my Ellie for 39 brief, beautiful years. You know, before I flew for this airline, I earned my wings in the United States Air Force in active combat. Freedom isn't free, but I was happy to risk it all. It was an honor to serve this country, but it is my absolute privilege to serve you wonderful passengers for one last time here tonight.
I'm the co-pilot. My name is Chloe, and I'm transgender.
41 years. This time I'm getting sent off, huh? Really?
Good game.
Bam! Ladies and gentlemen, welcome to another episode of Normal World. I'm Dave Landau.
I'm Quarterblack. I can't speak already.
You forgot your own name,
I forgot
like
my
Mitch
name.
McConnell.
Garrett. I had to shut down.
Yes, like a dying turtle. Anyway, welcome to the show, and of course, Angela.
Hi, it's me.
You make a handsome man.
I've heard that. Thank you.
And this weekend,
job.
you can join me at the Funny Bone in Omaha, Nebraska. That's right, so come on out. Matt McClowry will be there July 28th and 29th. But without further ado, I am very excited to bring on this guest. He's a speaker, an author, a podcaster. I love his podcast, The Wise and the Wise Guy, TV personality, and of course, former made member of the Colombo organized crime family. Yep. Please welcome Michael Franzese. Hello, Mr. Franzese. How are you?
Doing well, thank you. And you?
Good, thank you. Thank you for calling in.
Yeah.
Well, thanks for having me.
You have so much that I want to ask you, so I'm just going to try.
Yeah, we're going to try to fit it into this small amount of time that we have with you.
This tiny amount of time. Like, you were born in New York, and I find your story very interesting because you were actually in med school when you... Is that right? You were in med school when your father went away for bank robbery. And then you decided... Correct. Yeah, and you you decided to then join organized crime, but your father had just gone away for bank robbery, and I'm kind of wondering like why you would jump into that profession knowing what just happened, and I mean that in all seriousness.
Well, my dad, received a 50-year prison sentence,
Right.
and he was 50 years old when he went in. And I believe my dad was innocent, that he was framed on that, bank robbery conviction. And, 50 years old when he went in, you figure at 50 on top of that, he would die in prison. And so my dad told me he was innocent of that crime, and I wanted to help him out. And he thought the best way to help him was to become, to follow him in his life, because we had to go after witnesses that falsely testified. We need money for lawyers. We needed, political connections, the whole bit. So long story short, he proposed me for membership when I was 22 years old.
That's incredible. Wow. And wow, that really is just incredible, though. And then, were you ever part of that life before? Like, I mean, I'm sure you grew up around it, but were you kind of brand new to it at that point?
Well, I grew up with my dad, who was a very important figure in that life, and he was a major target of law enforcement. He was always, profiled in the media a lot, so I knew all about the life. I met all of his guys, but I was on a different course. I was going to be a doctor. So I was familiar with the life in that regard, but I hadn't been involved myself. My dad didn't want me to be involved until all of this happened.
That's really, that's just a fascinating and incredible story to just kind of pivot like that. And then, of course, you ended up going to prison. So, yes. And then what's interesting is, you and your dad never ratted, obviously, because you're still here. And then, sorry, Garrett.
I was going to ask, you've come to Christ since then. Did you start following Christ while you were still in prison, or was that after you were released? I don't know the early story about that.
The way, the short story is I met a young girl who was a young Christian. Her mother was a solid Christian. She was 20 years old. I met her. And so she kind of, opened the door to that faith for me. We happen to be, married for 38 years. Tomorrow we'll be celebrating our 38th year anniversary. But
congratulations.
Yeah, very cool.
Thank you. She, she opened the door for me. But, when I accepted that prison sentence for 10 years, the last 3 years, 29 months and 7 days, they had me in solitary. And it was in solitary that, a prison guard handed me a Bible. And that's when I started my journey. And, every day, every single day without fail, I read my Bible. I mean, I read it inside and out over those years. I had my wife send me in, several books on all different faiths. So I was studying. I was really in a search for the truth. And I just came out there solidly believing in Christianity based upon my research, scripture, and everything else that I read.
What was it that you connected to specifically? Because a lot of people have different ways that they kind of come into the faith. What was it specifically for you?
I connected with Jesus, and the way I did it, just so you understand, my whole life, all I ever heard from my dad was that you got to be a man's man. That's the standard in life you have to live up to. When I got into the life and I got made, they told me the same thing. We're men of honor. We're men above men. So, we had a certain standard that we had to live up to. And so when I realized that our Christian faith was based upon the life of Jesus, I separated his deity from his manhood, and I wanted to see what kind of man he was. And I was so attracted to the character of Jesus and the way he conducted himself. And I just came away with this conclusion, if I try to emulate the greatest man that ever walked the face of the earth, I'm going to benefit throughout my life. Everybody that's around me is going to benefit. And, if he wasn't the savior of the world, well, I'm dead anyway. So what did I lose? But since I believe that he is the savior of the world, we have all of heaven to gain. So that's my conclusion, and it's worked for me ever since, and that was 27 years ago.
And in there also, did you find, I see that you have these other passions, and one of them is also one of our passions, which is film. And is that when you started writing scripts? Because I know you wrote your first screenplay in prison, right?
That's correct, yes.
Did you end up selling that one?
No, I didn't. I wrote it just, I was passing time, but I got involved in the film business back in, the mid-'70s.
As a producer, right?
Yeah, as a producer. I produced a horror film back then. and just got a little bit of the bug. I got into the industry when the industry was different back then. I bought a distribution company and produced and distributed about 30 films. And it was a film that I was producing that I met my wife on. I mean, she was a dancer in the film, and fell in love, and we're married 38 years. So it worked out for me.
Which, I got to ask this, of all the movies that are made about the mafia, what one is the most accurate that you would say?
Now, this is going to be kind of crazy to you, but I've said it repeatedly, and I believe it. The HBO Gotti movie with Armand Assante and Anthony.
Yeah.
Absolutely brilliantly done and very accurate, because much of it was taken off of the surveillance tapes, and it was just so brilliant, all of it. Having said that, obviously Goodfellas is fairly accurate. They always take dramatic liberty with these movies. Donnie Brasco, fairly accurate. Casino, fairly accurate. And of course, Godfather 1 and 2, they were fictional. Wonderful films, two of the best films ever made, but they were more fictional than fact.
Was the Tangier supposed to be which hotel? Are you allowed to say that? I don't know if I'm supposed to know.
Yeah, it was the Desert Inn.
It was the Desert Inn? That's what I thought. Okay. And all right, that's for now.
Well, I want to flip it. What do you think is the most inaccurate?
Yeah, that's a good point.
There were so many. I mean,
I assume like Analyze This would probably be up there.
Yeah, that was more of a comedy film, but
it's a good movie. Chaz is in that, who you do a show with. But yeah, it's hilarious. But I would imagine you'd be killed pretty quickly.
No, I love the movie. I thought Billy Crystal was amazing. He was so funny in that movie.
Yeah,
De Niro is always great.
Yeah.
But The Sopranos, I get asked about that a lot, and it was one of the greatest TV series. It certainly set the stage for all the series that followed. It was brilliantly done, but it wasn't really accurate, a lot of it.
Yeah.
Now the Godfather of Harlem, totally inaccurate, but it's okay. I mean, you enjoy watching the series, they're not documentaries. So what's the difference?
Is that about Bumpy, who was in Harlem? Was that his name, the politician?
Yeah, it was Bumpy. They tried to show that, Chin Gigante, who was the boss of the Genovese family, and all of the families were so deeply involved in the drug trade in Harlem, and that's just not true. The way it's depicted in that, and I've spoken to the what's his name, Chris Columbus. I forget his last name, but anyway, I spoke to the producer and I told him that. I said, "Look, I enjoy watching it; it's great, but it's not accurate at all." And,
right. That's what's by far your favorite? Like, was because the Columbo, you were part of the Columbo crime family, and recently, obviously, that came to Paramount was the. And you're probably friends with him. So I don't mean in any disrespect, but the El Ruddy story, because it certainly favors him in the Paramount show, which is a really good show, actually. But was that fairly accurate to what happened with the making of The Godfather?
Well, let's put it this way. That was my era. I was intimately involved in that because I was very close to Joe Colombo and the Italian-American Civil Rights League.
That's what I thought, yeah.
I thought the series... Yeah, I thought The Offer was brilliant. I thought it was so well done.
Yeah.
The acting was terrific. Obviously, it was seen through the eyes of Al Ruddy. He made himself a little more of a hero than he actually was at that time. Giovanni Ribisi, who played Joe Colombo, in episode 1, I was a little upset because he played Joe Colombo like he was kind of a buffoon.
A little bit of a slouch.
Yeah.
But he grew into the role a lot better, and I was more happy as it went along. But it was pretty accurate. We had a lot to say. When I say we, I'm talking about Joe Colombo. He had a lot to say about that film. He did take Mafia out of the script. He did stop work when they called a strike, when things weren't going their way. But he also did have a relationship with Al Ruddy. We used to have meetings at the Park Sheraton Hotel, and Ruddy was there once or twice, and we talked about the film, quite a bit and how it was going. And Ruddy, promised that it wouldn't be demeaning to Italian Americans. So depending on how you look at it, it wasn't bad. But, I can tell you this. guys on the street after The Godfather came out, guys started carrying themselves differently. I mean, it kind of elevated the level of prestige of that life. I mean, it really did. And guys saw it that way. They weren't upset at all.
Yeah, it seemed to be, at least from what I can tell, I'm obviously not, of that era, but it seemed like being a gangster was sort of frowned upon. And then after that, it sort of became more of glorified.
Yeah, it made it look cool.
Absolutely.
In a way.
Which is,
Absolutely.
And my friend's uncle is Johnny Russo. I hope I'm saying that right. Was that actually true that he was beaten badly by James Caan, or was that sort of for effect?
No, that was true.
Oh.
Okay, I had a feeling.
I had a question. So you've been in both lives, right? You've produced film, you were in the mafia life. What do you see parallels in kind of today's Hollywood apparatus and between those two lives?
Not really. I mean, Hollywood, the condition of Hollywood now, I mean, it's, if I can use the term woke, it's become so woke. It's just,
yeah.
I liked it better way back when. Just like I like Vegas way back when. I don't like the way things are headed right now in many ways. So, we had a little more involvement back then than we have now. I don't know if any guys are still involved in that industry, but as far as films and music, we were extremely involved in both of those industries, and I enjoyed it. I enjoyed it back then. It's different now.
It's not as good, I could say.
Yeah, they didn't want to use the mafia back then, and now it's just. Can you imagine a woke mob?
Oh my gosh.
It'd just be the worst movie. Just using pronouns before you shoot a guy. Girl, she, him, whatever it is. That's just an awful. We should write it.
We should write that down.
The environmentally conscious.
We did already.
Oh yeah, we
did.
We came up with it. It's the
wrote that.
environmentally conscious mobster.
Yeah,
he drives a Tesla.
I don't know if you're going to be seeing that anytime soon.
No, nobody would like it. I'd probably get waxed just for making it, or clipped, as they say in the Armand Assante HBO film. Clipped is the term always used. Is there a story you would like to see related to the mafia that's never been told on film?
Well, my own story is in development right now.
Good for you.
Finally agreed to that after 20 some odd years, and I'm really pleased with the way it's developing so far. We have a script, and it's actually been developed as a television series, and we have 3 seasons, 10 episodes a season. And we're just about to bring it out when the strike hits. So it's delayed until whenever the strike is over. But there's no rush. It'll happen. But I'm pretty happy the way the story is being told. And, I'm a bug for authenticity. When I see a mob-related movie, the characters have to be authentic. The dialogue has to be authentic. And, we'll capture that in this series, obviously. And I'm excited about it. I think they're going to do a good job.
I got a question. You may not be able to answer it because you're in development.
Yeah.
But if you were going to cast somebody to play yourself, who would you pick?
It's crazy that I can't answer. I can't answer that because the answer would be unrealistic. Some of the greatest actors out there probably wouldn't be available for a television series, but they want to get somebody fairly new. They're talking about, I don't even know their names. They're talking about some hot young actors because, I think it starts out, I'm in my 30s. Mm-hmm. And then, of course, they're picking somebody for my dad because the story hinges a lot on the relationship between me and my father. So I don't know. They asked me, they said, Michael, who do you want to play you? And I said, well, I know, that casting means a lot. So how about Denzel Washington? I know that'll get at me.
You're like Kenan Thompson.
Like Netflix is like, yeah. Let's go.
You want to get it made, so whoever takes it over the finish line is fine with me,
Yeah. And sometimes it's really good to get an actor that's unknown, so then audiences connect to the character and not the actor. So if it was somebody like Denzel, I know it was a joke, but they're seeing Denzel, they're not seeing the character that you wrote.
Well, they want to see you in the story, and then
Right.
it is your story as opposed to that actor's story.
Well, the way they've designed it, you are going to see some of me in this because whenever you bring a story, the whole thing is, well, what's the take? The mob genre has been done. What's the new take? What's different? Even though it's a different story. So, their new take on the story, which they're very excited about, was having me actually involved. And I can't tell you how, but I do pop up in certain ways. And I give you a little example. There could be a scene. I'll go, oh, hold, wait a minute. That's not how it happened. Let me tell you how it really happened. And then it goes in another direction, something like that.
Well, it's cool that you're that involved with the story and you can point those things out like that's a little too far-fetched, or bring it back over here because that's the kind of story we want to tell.
Do you think right now, too, with the SAG-AFTRA, do you think that has a lot to do, I guess if you don't want to answer, it's fine, too, but with the strikes right now, do you think that movies are profitable even because it's all become kind of woke, or is TV is just going to be where it's at from now on?
Well, I was, unfortunately, I will say this, my 11-year-old granddaughter asked me to take her to see the Barbie movie, so being a grandpa that I am, I took her. I don't want to comment on the movie. I mean, I would if you want me to, but
I'd be interested. Sorry.
Well, I watched the movie too. Look,
he's got daughters.
I've got daughters. You got daughters. You got grandkids. Look.
Well, it was great to see so many people in the theaters, and then I went to see Oppenheimer after that. The same thing. So it looks like movies are coming back. If there's a good film out there and people are interested, that's great. But I still feel. I don't think people will ever want to get away from the theaters. But I think, having streaming and the way it is now, I think it's going to continue to take a bite out of that. Yeah. You're going to have blockbuster movies and probably, nothing else. That's my feeling, because everything else will go straight to streaming or cable.
It'll become like hey, let's all go to the movies every once in a while. It's not going to be that every weekend, let's go to that movie. It's going to be more like, hey, you remember bowling? That was a lot of fun. Let's go do that.
I always wonder, what's missing seems to be the story.
Yeah.
And I kind of miss that, though, where it's like, it's the Barbie movie, but, we're missing the stories. And that's kind of what I want to see again in film. Because like you do a podcast with Chaz Palminteri, who's made all kinds of just amazing films. He's one of my favorite actors. A Bronx Tale, which was his stage play, but obviously is just one of the best films ever made, in my opinion. De Niro directed it. How did you bump into him, actually? Did you know him prior to, like when you were younger, or how did you meet him?
No, briefly, but we've become very friendly over the last few years. And, I had him initially on my YouTube channel. And from that, we became just very good friends. I got a lot in common. And I love working with him. And, he's, I don't know if you know this, but I've just put a platform together with Mike Tyson. And we're doing a platform called Champions Corner, and it's a subscription platform. Without getting into it, we're going to be launching it next month. But we're also doing live shows, the first one being September 28th at the Beacon Theater in New York, and it'll be myself, Mike, and Chaz Palminteri will be on the stage. And we put a show together, and I think people are going to enjoy that. And we're going to take it around the country.
Dude, that's fantastic.
That sounds really cool.
Families are friends, I love the guy. Honestly, I love his wife. I mean, his kids. I mean, we get along really well.
He's just such, to me, like, because I just grew up loving indie film because I was born in '82 and I kind of got into film in the '90s boom of indie film. And that was sort of what he was just in everything. And that's what I just love about Chaz Palminteri is like he was the quintessential sort of indie actor where they would use him in so much stuff. He's just phenomenal.
Well, I will tell you this, and this was before I got close with Chaz, obviously. I told him his role of Sonny in that film was his best role ever.
I agree.
He played that to a T. It was just terrific.
Well, there's so many more.
And I said to him,
sorry.
Yeah, I said, don't get insulted, but it was your best role ever. I mean, I loved you in that film. And he wrote the script, as you know, and just some of the little, now you can't leave, things like that.
Yeah.
I love that.
With the bikers?
Yeah, as a matter of fact, I told him, Chaz, when you open our live show, as soon as everybody's seated, you got to come out with it. Now you can't leave. That's it.
We're locking the doors.
Well, one of the best life lessons is for $20, you don't have to talk to that kid anymore. I remember the first time I heard that, I'm like, that's the best advice. And every single bit of advice he gives in that movie, and then I love how at the end you realize his misery is that he doesn't trust anybody in his life, including this kid. And it all just sort of comes full circle and this kid kind of realized what's important. And it also deals with an interracial relationship and all this other stuff that just had never been touched on in that world.
Yes.
It really
And,
fascinating.
He's been doing a live show for 30 some odd years. And, I've seen it a couple of times. And have you seen it? Have you seen him on the stage?
Yeah, in Detroit.
Yeah. I mean, he just does a brilliant job. It's just brilliant. So, I mean, he's a very talented guy. I'll just give you a little inside scoop. He is involved with me in the development of the project. So, and he had a lot to add to it. That's
good news.
Very cool.
I know you talk a little bit about politics on your show, and I just have to ask you a couple questions if you don't mind. But one is, whose bad side would be worse to be on, Roy DeMeo or Hillary Clinton?
Well, you know what? At least with Roy, you know what you got, and
you know how you're going to die.
Right away.
You know you're going to die the other way, too.
Hillary, man, that's one bad woman. I can tell you that. You don't want to. I wouldn't want to be in the house with her and Bill.
No, I can just picture Bill shooting you, and then Hillary's the one stabbing you in the heart to get the blood to stop pumping.
Exactly.
Yeah, she's more aggressive.
Sorry,
she
I
really
read
likes
Murder
the
Machine.
She likes the connection.
Exactly. Yeah, she's rough. I'll tell you that.
And I've always thought this, like during I was living in New York when 2020 the whole thing happened. I was living up in Harlem, and we were doing a show on 35th and Broadway. Do you think that city would be far better off if the mafia still ran it? Because I do.
100%.
Okay. I just want to make sure I was right on that.
Yeah, it seems to make sense.
If we were running around in that city, you wouldn't have to have toothpaste behind glass with a lock and key on it. L.A. the same thing. It's out of control. It's unbelievable.
L.A. is absolutely out of control.
We took care of our neighborhoods. We didn't have any crime in our neighborhoods. That's why people wonder, why did people love John Gotti? Because we took care of our neighborhoods. You had no crime in there. We took care of the people. Nobody was worried. Look, in Greenpoint, where I grew up, my sisters can come home, walk the streets at 2 o'clock in the morning. Nobody worried about it. You wouldn't have half of the stuff that's going on. Believe me, we would have handled it. And I'm telling you, to see what's going on today, it's so out of control. These politicians should be ashamed of themselves. Listen, I was a mob guy. I wasn't exactly in love with the police. I was arrested 18 times. I had 7 indictments. I went to trial 5 times, and I did 8 years in prison. But even I know defunding the police is the worst idea you could ever have. I was funny. I was telling somebody once, I said, do you think if Giuliani would have came to me and said, hey, Michael, don't worry about it. If we do indict you on this RICO case, you're going to get bail, no problem. We're only going to be a year in prison. Do you think I would have said, hey, great, now I'm going to go straight? No, I would have did more stuff on the street.
Yeah, don't worry. It's a revolving door. Sorry.
I don't get it.
Yeah.
Defunding police. And look what's happening. I don't know.
No, it's horrible. And I remember seeing that like outside of certain nightclubs, there'd be like just like all these people on the street and fighting and like shooting up. And I'm like, like in the 80s, it'd just be a line of people and you would never even see that.
Yeah.
Like you wouldn't. I remember the first time I went to New York, it was probably in the 80s, late 80s, 90s. And I just remember people could buy paintings of John Gotti, like on every corner. Like people loved him.
They loved him. Look, the law didn't like him, and, he could be a little difficult within the life, but people on the outside of the life had no problem with him, and most of the guys were like that. Fat Tony Salerno in Harlem, he had his social club there. That was his base of operations. They loved him there, the people in Harlem. My neighborhood, too. We were very well liked because we took care of people. We didn't hurt them. They needed something, they came to us. If we can handle something, we did it. We didn't prey on the people that we lived around, that we took care of. And, I'm telling you this, guys, without getting too political, there's guys in office that are worse than any mob guys I ever came up against in my life. I really mean that. We wouldn't do some of the things that I see being done now. And I really mean that.
Well, yeah, I don't think you just hurt innocent people all the time, right?
Yeah.
I mean, that's the best way I can put it. I mean, we have to be so vague on YouTube and different platforms, I feel, but that's what it seems. I mean, it's just taking from everyone all the time, isn't it? To the point where there's nothing left.
Exactly. I mean, it's, the way to solve every problem is to go to the middle class and make it more burdensome for them. It's, listen, if we go into politics, just let's pack a lunch and let's be here for the next couple hours.
Yeah.
That's true.
That's the danger of it, man.
Yeah, it really is, because I think we're going to see eye to eye on probably everything, especially when you open with, isn't the mafia great in New York, the way they ran it better than any politician?
Well, there's an interesting thing I've been thinking about that is that, not that I'm endorsing the mafia, right? But the mafia is a very private citizen organization.
Well, very much so.
And the government was like, well, only we can be the ones breaking the law. So they came in and busted it all up. So I find that the parallels there.
Well, I've been saying this for years, and I've said this. And listen, I went to I went to prison for a crime that I was guilty of. I pled guilty. I did my time. And my dad obviously did a lot of bad things in his life. I'm not sugarcoating anything. But the crime that he went to prison for, that he was convicted of and given 50 years, he was innocent of. I'll take that to my grave, because I investigated that case. Every witness recanted their testimony. We gave them lie detector tests, proved they lied at the trial. We can never get the conviction overturned. And so many law enforcement people have told me, Michael, we knew that was a bad case. And you know what I told people all the time? I said, look, when you give the government the ability to break the law, to go after the criminals, eventually they're going to use that same process to go after their enemies. Yep. And that's exactly what we're seeing now. They're weaponizing the FBI, the Justice Department, to go after their political enemies. And that is so dangerous. It's dangerous for everybody, and it started with, all this cancel culture. Hey, we don't like what you're saying. You don't agree with our agenda. You're canceled. One thing leads to another. It's like things start to drip a little bit until all of a sudden you got a flood of bad things going on. And that's what's happening right now. And man, we need reform. We need reform at the Department of Justice and the FBI in the worst way. And I know a lot of retired FBI agents that are saying the same darn thing. They're disgusted with what they're seeing now.
Well, we've taken out a sense of community, and that's what we've destroyed inside. We've taken out community out of the communities. Where that's the number one thing I think that's destroying each other. And then you have the politicians, which I do think is interesting, because with Gotti, at least from what I can tell, they were very mad at him for the $3,000 suits, the Teflon Don, having a house that I wouldn't say was really very obnoxious at all. But now you have all these other leaders who are supposed public servants, right, in these multi-million-dollar homes. Isn't that the most egregious thing, when in the most hypocritical thing, when it's like you're taking down this guy for doing, obviously, yes, he's a criminal, but like, you took accountability for what you did and you served your time. And I was listening to a podcast with you and Chaz, and you were saying that how you've never heard a politician take accountability. And I was thinking about that for a while today, because it's true. Like, they live in these massive homes flaunting it at you. And I don't think Gotti was flaunting it in the same way. Like, certainly not like this, where you look at Pelosi's house, where it's like, this $20 million home in San Diego, San Francisco, wherever it is. San Francisco. Like, that's just, it's stunning to me.
And they're shutting down the city and going, no, you can't get a blowout, but I can, because I'm Nancy Pelosi.
Or her husband getting a blowjob from a man.
Yeah, getting a blowout.
Sorry, it can't help it.
Yeah, and then blaming it on the woman who gave you the blowout. Allowed you to come in there.
It was
turned on her and turn on her. Well, listen, how do you explain? They never have to answer for this. How do you explain how they come in, a $200,000 a year job in government, and all of a sudden they become the best stock traders around, and it turns into billions of dollars and all of this, and they never have to explain themselves. How they become multimillionaires. Nancy Pelosi, I can't understand a word that woman ever says. She never makes sense. And yet she's worth $500 million. You know what I mean? I mean, come on. It's a racket.
She has a mouthful of Tic Tac. She's always drunk, like a lady at the tennis club who's on a bunch of Valium. It's just, and for some reason, yeah, she's great at trading all of it.
She's been in the government for 1,000,000 years.
Well, it's because they're all getting these insider tips, and then you look at it, and it's like you locked up Martha Stewart because somebody gave her a little bit of an edge, and meanwhile, all these people do nothing but insider trade right in front of us.
Yeah,
Exactly. And, listen, most people are ignorant of this, and I don't mean that in a demeaning way. Most people can't focus on that. They're worried about, supporting their family, making a living, working 40 hours a week. They're not in tune with what these people are doing. But, you and I, we have time to watch and see what's going on. And listen, I had a lot of politicians, when I had my licenses for my gas business, I couldn't get a license. I had 18 licenses. And I was paying off, politicians to get it. And, but people don't know this. They don't know it. And, I've said this all the time. Every politician that we worked with on the street, they're all Democrats. And they said, well, why is that? I said, they were easy to corrupt. They were ready to go along with us. What could I tell you? The Republicans weren't back then. But, the ordinary people just don't know this. And you know this. If you turn on, mainstream media, you're not seeing it anyway. So they don't know what's really going on. But I think I'm a little bit encouraged that things are starting to come to light. I mean, this whole issue with Hunter Biden and Biden. Guys, look, I had 18 shell companies, 18 of them. They had no brick and mortar offices behind them. They did nothing but have a bank account so I can put money in there. And the money that I was putting in there, I was defrauding the government out of. It was tax money. Yeah. They've now shown that there's, 10 or 11 of these shell companies that did nothing but collect $17 million, and nobody's answering for it. Mm-hmm. It's so obvious to me what's going on. It's a racketeering indictment right then and there, and nobody's answering for it. It's almost comical if it wasn't so detrimental to this country.
Yeah. It's amazing. And you see it because you ran the same scam, but now the people that run the scam are the most powerful people in the world.
Exactly.
It's a shame. And
it's really dark.
No, it is, but I'm just glad that, people like you have spoke out. I'm glad that there's just people who are noticing, and I think you're right, that there is something starting to turn because people are tired of it. You can only be, I think once 2020 happened and certain things and you're still seeing the results of it, people losing everything, is finally when people are like, look, I have to look into this because I can't live like this. I can't deal with this sort of detrimental the society, the way that everything's been, especially their own life. Like, I can't do this to my family. I can't lose everything. I can't watch whether people get rich while your portfolio for your IRA gets, deduced to half. I think it's good that people are waking up.
Yeah, I think so too. And, they're so out in the open about what they're doing now. I mean, they don't even make attempts to really cover it up. And the attempts that they make are so feeble in light of the evidence that's coming out. I don't understand how they think they, in a long run, how they can get away with this. I mean, there is a point where you got to realize this is not going to last forever, man. The gig's up. And I think, what happened today in the court with Hunter Biden, the judge wouldn't accept that plea. I think the house of cards are starting to crumble. I really do.
I saw that too, and I think it's good that it's because it's not just the laptop acts and the stuff that he did that were. I understand addiction. I'm in recovery. I think people are, there's a certainly ability to forgive.
Yeah, there's a line though.
But there's this line of real corruption though that he was involved in that everybody ignored, and all this other stuff was thrown in your face to try to hide that. And now the real stuff is coming out, and a judge can't say, well, no, this is fine.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, well. What they wanted in that plea was ridiculous. I mean, a slap on the wrist, and then he has immunity from anything else. So meaning all investigations would have to stop. That's what they were hopeful for. Everything would, because he can never be prosecuted again once that's, accepted in court.
Right.
And the judge basically said, no, you're not going to do that to me in this courtroom because I'm going to take the, the backlash of that afterwards as this information continues to come out. And I just granted you immunity for all these other crimes. And she wasn't willing to do that. So listen, we'll see what happens in the next couple of days. And, I say the same thing. Look, I had a sister that, died, unfortunately, of an overdose of drugs. My brother was a
Sorry
drug
to hear
addict.
that. Sorry.
So I have empathy for that. But it wasn't that this was confined to him personally. His behavior has affected this country in a rough way. And, people have said to me, well, Joe Biden, what do you expect? He's supportive of his son. I said, look, I have two boys. If my son was doing this stuff, I would still love him. But I would say, hey, stay away from the, you're causing the whole problem here in this country for my administration. But Joe Biden can't do that because he was complicit with Hunter.
Yeah.
Right.
He has to support him.
Well, enabling as a parent is bad enough, but doing it from the highest power, the highest office in the world is bad enough. But doing it when it's just to benefit you is just sick.
Absolutely. And it's coming out. Guys, I have to say this, and again, please understand where I'm coming from. I was a criminal for 20 years, but we had a line that we wouldn't cross. At least I wouldn't. But, the drug thing is very close to me because of what happened in my own family with my brothers and sisters. But, I spoke to 850 Border Patrol agents from the state of Texas. I did a big seminar with them. And afterwards, we talked. And there's some of the horrible stuff that they were telling me about things coming over the border between kids and human trafficking.
Yep.
They said they're not even getting 5 to 7 to 10% of the illegal drugs that are coming across. They told me some horror stories that they personally encountered. And I'm saying to myself, we've elected a man to the highest office in the world. We put our trust in him. People did, to protect and defend this country and to act in their best interest of our country domestically and, of course, against our enemies. And here's a guy that knows this is going on. 100,000 people died of opioid addiction last year, and it's coming across the border in droves, and you don't do anything to stop it? It's like, how do you live with yourself?
Yeah.
What are you? I don't care if it was, Donald Trump. I don't care, Republican, Democrat. I don't care if it was my own brother doing that. I'd be against him. And I just don't understand it, guys. I don't understand how you can sleep at night and do things like that. I mean, guys on the street wouldn't do that. I mean it.
No, I believe it completely. And if it was affecting your own son and you saw it in your own house, and then you also saw how it was affecting America, because I don't know anybody who hasn't lost somebody to fentanyl, and this show is shot in Texas.
Yeah.
It's a very serious thing, and they do nothing about it but loosen up the borders more. And it regardless of where they're sent, anything else, it's a serious issue, and it's going to get worse, and they know that. And nothing's being done about it, and that's the saddest part. I mean, a movie has to come out, for people to start going, oh, there's human trafficking, and it's been hiding in plain sight forever. And I mean, that, everybody knows that, but now it's shocking people, and it's like, no, it's always been there.
Oh, and even that gets politicized and gets shot down when we have, for years, have known this has been a thing. So that's when I feel like that's when you know that there's really a problem, when they try to silence it.
No doubt. And it's horrible. I say this, as a person of faith, I say it's demonic.
Absolutely.
It's demonic that they have control of people in this regard, and it's causing just so much damage, to innocent people. And it's terrible. I'm telling you, if we don't have a real change here, at the next election, I don't know where this country is going to go. I really don't. I don't want to see a revolution. I don't want to see people die. I don't want to see people, burning businesses down again. We went through all of that, but something has to change dramatically, or this country is in a lot of trouble.
Yeah, it's headed for a civil war, and I don't want to see that either. And that's what how a lot of people feel.
Yeah.
And
it doesn't have to.
No,
it doesn't have to at all.
Does not have to. And listen, if God forbid it ever got to that point, we have enemies that are very strong in weight. There's no joke. And we don't want to leave ourselves that vulnerable. I mean, things I'm hearing about our military now, we know Russia has, even though they kind of showed themselves in Ukraine, they still have nuclear ability that's very frightening. China. They have more warships than we have now, more, what are we doing? And we have a woke military now. The idea that's in people's heads. It's just everything. You know what I was laughing at? I mean, this may sound crazy. Even the dog in the White House now is biting CIA people.
Yeah.
It knows. It knows.
They can't even get the dog right. Everything this guy touches turns into something bad.
The dog senses evil. Michael, he senses.
Yes, they said he bit 10 people already. 10 CIA agents or something. One of them had to go to the hospital.
That dog is based. That's a good boy.
Yeah, he just really hates. It's a well-trained dog. That's what it is. He's just a really well-trained dog.
No problem.
He's just sniffing out the cocaine they keep finding.
Yeah, how do you like that?
Oh,
the most secure building in the whole country, maybe the world. Cameras everywhere. Just probably every nook and cranny. You can't miss anything.
We can't find it. We have to shut down the investigation.
Yeah.
We're never going to figure it out.
Exactly.
Oh yeah. Bush did it once in the 70s. We had to hear about it for 8 years.
Man.
Meanwhile, somebody just leaves it on, the desk in the Oval Office, and nobody has a clue where it
No
came
idea.
No idea.
Must have been the cleaning lady, I'm sure. She's Colombian. Like, that's just, it's absurd how any of that. But yeah, that's the time we're living in. We're actually just running out of time, actually, but I can't thank you enough for coming on the show.
Yeah, thank you so much.
And I do want to say that people can see you speak September 9th at the Robbins Theater in Warren, Ohio. September 23rd, you will be at the Caesars Casino in Atlantic City for the History of the Mafia. And September 8th through 10th, you can go to Franzese wine tasting in the Cleveland area and buy his wine at www.franzesewine.com.
Very nice. Hey, actually, I have one more question. Can I ask you one more question?
Sure.
Did we
What
did we
happened?
lose the connection?
Just move on.
Did we?
Just
Okay.
Did he hang? Are we?
He
gonna-
hung
just
up
stop
on-
drawing attention to it and move on.
Are we going to
Okay.
get clipped? Am I going to get clipped? He'll probably clip Garrett, right? Okay.
Yeah.
Anyway, well,
That was a good.
speaking of clipped, God tried to clip Mitch McConnell today.
Maybe.
And a string of okay, Mitch? Anything else you want to say, or should we just go back to your office? Do you want to say anything else to the press? Go ahead, John. I'll take a break. Let's go back to you.
Go ahead, John.